Remember, we do give away a game each and every week to the subscriber most active on the channel. And also, if you want to save yourself money on any of the games you buy, use all the codes that are in the description. You can do that for physicals over at PlayAsia or digital purchases using our website to buy your eShop credit. Don't buy Risk of Rain Returns. I've said it. It's too addictive. Why are you still here? Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp. My name's Mark Walker, and as I'm sure you can imagine by the title, Risk of Rain Returns is absolutely worth you picking up on Switch, but you probably want to know why, especially if maybe you started with the second game. And of course, we'll also include performance on Switch, but should you risk a return to Petrichor 5, or am I about to rain on your parade? Well, clearly not, but let's find out. Now, unless you're a fan of the series, you may not even realise that Risk of Rain Returns arrived on the Nintendo Switch. If you played the original game, then you're going to feel right at home. But this remaster has several different design changes, improvements to multiplayer, new survivors, and imagining you've never played the games before, I'm going to try and articulate exactly how this all works. It's a roguelite featuring a group of survivors, of which you'll find new ones, including those that can deploy turrets, and many that you will have seen if you played the sequel, which was the 3D Risk of Rain 2. There are 15 different survivors in total, but you only start with a couple. Now, a lot of similar roguelites have an auto lock-on mechanic for when you're shooting. Brotato springs to mind. One thing that will take a bit of getting used to for some is having to turn your player to shoot in the direction of the enemy. Now, that might sound simple enough, but when you're trying to kite the enemies and run in the opposite, having to manually turn fire and then adjust your position can feel a little unusual. There are a couple of classes that actually aim automatically towards the enemy, with kiting them being their speciality. But what is actually the point of the game? Well, after you're dropped in, literally, you'll have a large map to explore. What you'll notice is there's a difficulty rating in the corner of the screen. It doesn't take Sherlock to realise that that's the current difficulty of the game, but why is it there? Now, enemies will spawn all over the place. Killing those will drop a nice clinky currency, and you can use that to purchase different items from within this stage. Searching out and finding the best of those is really important, and as with almost every roguelite I've ever played, they're stacked up in the corner of the screen, and they afford you many different perks. Will you know what they are before you pick them up? Nope. And again, that's part of the charm, trying to learn exactly what does what. One of my favourites already has been the meat chunk, shooting enemies and they drop little chunks of meat that you can eat to restore your health. And when you do inevitably die, progression really comes in the form of unlocking new items for subsequent runs and also knowing exactly what does what. There's a decent amount of verticality within these areas as well. You can climb up vines, down ladders, and use jump pads to try and evade the enemies. While they'll hunt you down mercilessly, they can't go everywhere depending on the type, but all the while you're looking for the teleporter. Before you activate this, things are reasonably okay in terms of difficulty, but therein lies the kicker. The longer you mulch about the stage, searching for items and trying to loot hoover everything up, the more difficult the game gets. This is indicated, as we said, in the corner, and that's why it's definitely worth at least seeking out the warp gate, as we're about to see, so that you don't find yourself in a very difficult situation before you head into an even more difficult situation. But as soon as you decide to channel your inner Stargate, a boss will emerge, enemies will go absolutely loco, and you'll be fighting desperately for your life to survive for 90 seconds. You might wonder why it's 90 seconds, so do I, but you know. Haven't a clue. Answers on a postcard. The boss fights are intense and these moments are brutal. If you're playing online with someone else, it can really make the difference in that difficulty. Or at best, they'll take some of them out for you, and at worst, they'll act as a handy decoy. Co-op mode is easy to set up as well, with a nice matchmaking lobby, or you can just join existing games or create your own. Once the timer reaches 0 and the boss is defeated, you'll instantly teleport to the next stage and the whole thing begins again. The developers have opted to give quite a few options for tweakability, not only in terms of tweaking the difficulty of the game to make it slightly easier if necessary, although I use easy in air quotes, you can also set the game mechanics to be exactly like the classic Risk of Rain, or even choose custom and individually tweak the areas you want, including your damage and the damage you receive. It is nice, especially for those that find the initial experience a bit too intense, because, yeah. gets really intense. And if all of that isn't enough, you can also unlock artifacts, which essentially act as modifiers for the gameplay and can be activated before you run. No roguelite is complete without a lovely bestiary. Now I said bestiary. A catalogue of all the monsters in the world, and here there are literally hundreds. From the lowly grunt that will run continuously towards you and slightly unnervingly be able to jump and follow you, to those flapping buggers that can go absolutely anywhere, and everything in between. But the stages also have different environmental effects that will also impact the gameplay. Now you can take some fall damage, which historically is the bane of my life, and there are a few stages where you might head underwater, meaning that you slowly and gracefully glide, usually to your death, but at least you didn't die falling. It's not just items that you'll pick up, there are also challenge areas introducing a titular risk in return for a nice reward, or shrines where you can make an offering in the hope of some item. Controlling all of this is very straightforward, and in fact you can switch between the original controls for Risk of Rain or the slightly tweaked version in this new game. They're sensible, with your special abilities being assigned to the trigger buttons and L and R, and those also having a cooldown once used. Each character has some form of dodge move, whether it's a warp or a roll. It provides you some valuable invincibility frames, when the only way out is, In the grand scheme of roguelite RNG, that's random number generator, that feeling that you don't actually have any power over the game, and that it all depends on what items you pick up, this one falls on the lower end of that scale. While game-changing items will still be the order of the day, skill and decisions that you make are a very large component, and for me what kept me coming back for more. But you will be crushed mercilessly multiple times before you learn the best techniques and the character that works for you. Gameplay-wise, we have more of what made the original so fun, with some tweaks that some fans will like and others won't, but which you can change in the options, so it's a bit of a non-issue. The controls are good, although it does take some getting used to with some of those characters that don't automatically point towards the enemies when they shoot, and jump into ladders or climbable objects can sometimes feel a little hit and miss. These are minor gripes, and I give gameplay 18 out of 20 and the controls 17 out of 20. The remastered visuals do look lovely. Calling something HD pixel art sounds a little unusual, but when you see the original game versus what it looks like today, it kinda makes sense. There's so much detail within these environments. The stages are varied, they use a muted but very unique colour palette, which really does work. There are lots of references in here as well to popular franchises, and this is all running at 60 frames per second in both docked and handheld modes with minimal load times, and I didn't experience any crashes at all. The soundtrack is composed by Chris Christodoulou. You'll know his great musical scores from Risk of Rain 2, and is an unusual mashup. If you took prog rock, chiptune, electronica, and sometimes some synth and put them all in a bowl and stirred them up, you'd have something like this. There are also a couple of special guest tracks, and it is one of those soundtracks that I think owning on vinyl is almost a must. Personally, I give visuals and performance 18 out of 20, sound and audio scores 19 out of 20. Risk of Rain Returns will set you back £12.76, or your regional equivalent, with more survivors, more gameplay options, improved visuals, improved music, a much better online multiplayer experience, not to mention 1 to 4 player locally. There is more than enough to sink your teeth into here, and I think that's a very reasonable price. If you played the original game and you loved it, this will be a great return to you. The nostalgia will be real, but you'll also feel like you're getting enough new to make it worth once more diving in. For everyone else, yeah, you should definitely get it. I give value 19 out of 20. Hoppu team have done a cracking job with Risk of Rain Returns. It feels like the Switch version in particular has had just as much love and attention as everywhere else. It runs flawlessly and is my preferred way to play it at the moment. Risk of Rain Returns gets a SwitchUp score of 91%. Let me know in the comments, is this one you're interested in? Have you already picked it up? If so, we'll have to do some jolly cooperation. And as I said at the start, do save yourself some money on that. You can save yourself about 10% using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg to buy your eShop credit. All the info's in the description. Nice one. Thanks to our Patreons and members and all of you that support us on the channel. From Glen and I, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys. See you.